Hello, Thiru.
Hi, Alagan.
Hi. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of Tech After Work. I know everybody wants to start a podcast. We wanted to start a podcast for an easy 2 years, and then we have been procrastinating on it forever. And finally, we are here on the first episode. And I will be talking to interesting people from Rootcode and outside every month. And then we'll be talking about the interesting developments about work. So, the goal of Tech After Work is to bring in conversations that we naturally have after work in an amplified format. So, welcome to
Yes.
Thiru. Are we both AI models?
I mean, why not?
Because
Thinking about the similarities, AI
Yeah.
models can access past information and make judgments. We can do the same.
Yes.
The biological mechanisms are different, but the only thing that's keeping them away from us is them being able to have their own goals and take actions towards those.
You know what? Some days when I wake up, I genuinely think we are all AI models walking around. Just that with some limited rules. Like, see, even us, I mean, we know AI models can't do too much. And we can't do too much either. We are limited. And we are just very well programmed with what makes us feel good. We have the reward functions inside us. Nicely done. You want to, eat so that you can survive, you want to drink water, you can survive. You want to reproduce because, more humans are needed. That's how we are programmed. So the process is fun.
And
We could be.
And I think, again, the difference there is that we are very general models, right?
If we are actually models, we should be like probably the perfect level of models that we have seen.
In a way, yeah.
If there's a creator, must have done a solid job.
Solid job. I mean, took a very long time though.
I know.
But building a biological, carbon-based system that can evolve intelligently,
And
I
that
mean,
can
great
handle
job.
energy
Exactly.
on its own. Can you imagine? Imagine if we are walking around with wires and we have to plug ourselves.
And how efficient the entire system is.
Yeah, the calorie burning, think about it.
Exactly.
You can plug something and then it just makes energy out of it. So you can function as a machine, go around, run.
And the entire environment is so self-sustainable and it's interconnected. So that, when we train AI models, we generally train them individually. But if you think about how we as human evolved our intelligence, it's very collaborative, right? We improved through interactions.
Sometime in late night discussions, I mean, you have seen me talk about simulation theory a lot, right?
Yes.
Whether you believe in theories like that or not, even if you are a pro like evolution kind of advocate, still I think there's a lot of similarities between us, how our brain functions, to how an AI model functions and learns. I recently pushed myself to learn something new, skiing. I was always scared of skiing because, see, I'm born in a tropical country, right? Of course, we don't have ice here. Of course, my body doesn't know how to slide and still keep a balance, right? And but I always wanted it because now I spend a lot of time in Scandinavia, in the Nordics region, a lot of ice. Most of the year is winter, so I really wanted. I saw it's fun, but when I try to learn, it's very hard. But then this time I approached it like an AI model. I was like perfectly fine falling. Every time I fell, I was like, I'm collecting another data point. Every time I did it well, I'm like, okay, that's a positive data point.
And what's interesting is if your brain learns to adapt the physics without even having to think about it, right? It's very, very intuitive, but still very simple. How humans learn the concept of gravity, right?
Yeah.
Like, for example, we can, there are videos and talks from people like Boston Dynamics, where they say it's extremely sophisticated just to make a robot walk with
Yeah.
balance, right?
Yeah.
So much of complex physics, so much of rules, a lot of ML running in the back end. But we humans, like babies, do it seamlessly, like
Yeah,
2
you
years
just
in, and
get
they
up
already
and then you just scroll and get up and walk.
and you don't have to remember those rules. For example, when you were skiing, the first time you fell down, and probably you went through 5 iterations, had a lot of snow, and
Oh no,
came.
like 40 iterations. I I was the only brown guy in the mountain, and the people were looking at me. I think people felt bad for me, and a lot of like old old grandmas started cheering for me when I slide down like properly without falling. They were like, "Yeah, go boy." Yeah, but I ended up doing it well though. So
But you don't think about the rules
yeah, you know,
when you improve, right? It's interesting how the brain naturally adapts to those,
yeah,
without us using our logical brain to think about it. And interestingly, that's also one of the toughest concepts or problems in AI right now, because whenever a model has to think through, or whenever we have to have the model to learn a new task, we have to train it on that task, right? Even models like GPT, like chat, GPT 3, 4, everything, if you look at the training pipeline, it's very human oriented,
right.
supervised labels and data. But we
I know
as
where you're
general
going with this.
models,
Yeah,
we do not learn, a baby doesn't need to fall a million
yeah.
times to learn the physics of walking, right? So that's
And
like a
not
mind
always
blowing
it's
concept.
supervised either. Like when you fall, you
Exactly.
figure out how not to fall. I don't know. It's just a beautiful system right here. Again, this this whole industry of AI is going crazy, like with ChatGPT and everything. Right? It's unbelievable. Um, where we are right now, it has become so mainstream that everybody saw the power of AI suddenly. Yeah, yeah. I started saying that ChatGPT is my best performing salesperson
Salesman.
because I mean we have been doing AI for a very long time, and I go and meet customers and try to pitch. You know what? You can revolutionize your business this way, and they say like, yeah, I know what you mean, but maybe later. It's a luxury, right? Now when I walk into meetings with like board members and shareholders and decision makers, it's like, how can we use AI? How do we use AI to kind of make a better workflow, better decision? How do we use generative AI?
I think over the course of 1 year, it turned from a luxury to a necessity now.
Unbelievably. And in the last 6 months, the AI consulting sales has tripled.
Skyrocketed, yes.
I mean, thank you, ChatGPT, for that. And also, like, it's not as simple as we just suddenly skyrocketed. It's also like we built the credibility over time, right? So we were doing things even before people knew what was happening, right? So
Started working on AI because it was the coolest, before it was the coolest thing to
before
do.
it was cool. That's the point. That is the point. But yeah, and this auto GPT thing is crazy, right?
Yes. It's very interesting to look at it, because naturally when we start interacting with ChatGPT, very powerful model, but it has a text in, text out interface, right?
Yeah, it can't do actions,
It can't
right? Yeah,
take actions, although it has the power to do so.
right.
OpenAI has specifically limited it. But the moment you connect tools like ChatGPT or GPT-4, the model itself,
Yeah,
to external services it can access, for example, like Google search, you can do wonders. So AutoGPT is based on that concept. It's connected to GPT. Last time I checked, it was connected to GPT-4. So let's say you want to send an email. Simple task. You ask the model to send an email to the specific email addresses. The model first breaks down the tasks into goals and starts executing these goals. Very innocent use case, right? Now, same model. So this is why it started getting interesting. When they open sourced it, people were using it for all fun use cases.
yeah.
Then somebody thought about it and just asked it a command to conduct a DDoS attack on a particular website. It accessed the internet for tutorials on how to conduct a
My
DDoS
God,
attack,
yes.
downloaded the packages, and executed it step by step. So these models are extremely powerful. It proved that LLMs can be powerful not only in their creative or generative abilities, but also in making decisions and breaking down problems.
And that's exactly where there are this new danger of open sourcing
Yeah.
models, right? Because what if you have like a perfect model with proper guardrails to be ethically right, and then you open source it and just people take off the guardrails and then do stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
There are fair arguments on both sides, Alagan. One is, this notion of how the internet was built open source, right? There is a massive argument going on saying the internet is as advanced and improved at the pace it did because it was developed open source.
True. I've heard that.
And there's also an argument for open source models that the more the accessibility, obviously the risk. For example, all internet protocols are transparent, right? That's how attackers craft their attacks. On the other hand, even to build guardrails, you need to exploit these models more and more and more. So if, let's say, Google is building a proprietary model and it's only Google engineers trying to work on it and test it and test the ethical parts of it, it's going to be limited to a very small number of people. They think they would have had the fix. Imagine if HTTPS, the protocol, was developed by like 20 engineers or even 200 engineers.
That's
so
true.
that's a fair argument on that end.
The problem is that these tools, these models are so powerful. Like, I mean, internet made things very accessible. It made things open, but it wasn't necessarily like a unlimited powerful machine that can do things, right? This is way too powerful. I think that's where the trouble is going to be.
And I think, again, I'm arguing on both sides now, but if we sort of think of steel manning this use case from an opposite end, it also makes sense because the distribution of compute power among humans, it's not the same as the 90s when the internet was developed.
So commoditized now.
Yeah, you have models you can run on your phone now. So it's most people have the power to, if you have a general MacBook Pro, you can run small LLMs, right?
And that's the whole problem with people arguing that we should regulate AI, right?
Yes.
I mean, how do you regulate AI if people can, I mean, you can regulate popular LLMs. Fine, you can do. If you go one level deeper, you can regulate compute providers.
Yeah.
I don't know how the hell you're going to police that, but I mean, maybe, let's say, hypothetically you can. But what if somebody runs it in their own machine? Compute is so cheap. Internet is so cheap in most of the countries. You plug a device and then you run something. That's what baffles me. As much as I like to see that we have controls so that malicious actors don't really take control of these powerful tools, I also don't know how we are going to do that. Right?
It's very tough. And the regulatory problems are from different angles. Like one is obviously protecting the malicious intent. We don't want bad actors. But then there's the data privacy problem also. Dolly had a major issue, right? Dolly was trained on millions of images, or possibly even more, data sets of images. And whenever Dolly generates an image, whenever we type, fluffy pink cat in an astronaut suit, it's implicitly referring to these images to generate the image, right? And the data about this, knowledge about these images, the patterns, the graphs are all embedded in the weights. And when this reference is done by Dolly, when Dolly uses this data implicitly, how are these creators compensated? Because OpenAI is now making a hell ton of money, using their models. The creators of the data are not compensated at all.
Yeah,
so,
last week they started discussions with the media companies and GPT and Google guys and Microsoft and everybody. And they're having a similar conversation that how do we bring in a positive licensing model? Because two angles to it. One is everybody knows GPT learned from the open internet. That also means a lot of content that was created with a lot of effort, right?
Yes.
And
a lot of human cognitive effort.
human and labor effort that went into creating. And shouldn't the creators be fairly compensated? One question, right? The other side of it, media companies are shit scared that they will go out of business.
Yeah.
They are scared that people will ask ChatGPT and learn things and never come to their websites about what's happening in the world. So they want to kind of, it's like, I mean, if you are still holding on to a CD label business, you would have gone out, right?
And if you can imagine that as a product,
Yeah.
It's interesting to see. All media companies have sources, right? That's where they get their news from.
Yeah.
And let's say there's now a central source, you connect it to a model like GPT, and you can even start a whole media company only based on a model. It aggregates data from the sources, collects it together, writes a collection of articles. And let's say if you have it as an app, it should be even powerful enough to generate custom articles based on how you prefer reading, maybe based on feedback collected of how you like previous articles. So, it's like a whole media company in one go.
Have you seen this? I forgot the name of this AI, the project. It's something that from like sketched images, it can create storyboards. And from storyboards, it can create like movie clips.
Yeah.
Right? And that made me think, I mean, it's not like a really primarily commercially super viable use case. But if you and me are movie creators, but if you create the storyboards with the sense of the story, and then depending on what people want to see, like if, let's say, Dhoni is interested in romance and Sachin is interested in action, what if AI can put that flavor in and generate a movie on the fly? Because already the movies are being generated to some extent, smaller clips. So I mean, they are not perfect, but I mean, this is at the infancy of this
And
tool,
video generation is again a very complex task because there's a visual aspect to it, and then there's also a time, like a temporal aspect to it, and you have to combine both, and the logical sequence needs to make sense.
Yeah, and models generally suck at it. That's why even the best videos that come out of it still don't make sense. There are like visual mistakes in that. There are sequential mistakes that humans can easily spot, right? But yeah, I mean, if they get better, I mean, images, they have gotten better. Sound, they have gotten better. So if they can crack the time sequence of frames because video is a set of frames, right?
Yeah,
with slight changes. How they can break
and
in.
it'll be interesting to see how multimodal models play out also.
Yeah.
So Google recently came up in their recent I/O. It was all about AI. There were even memes flowing around the internet.
Is it
LinkedIn,
like
I saw.
Trump saying China?
Yeah.
AI.
It's a Sundar saying AI. I think somebody said precisely it was around more than 40 or 50 times that Sundar told the word AI. Every speaker told it. And so Google released the model. The difference between Palm 2, the Google model released, and GPT 3.5 is that Palm is multimodal, meaning the neural network can not only take text as input but also images. And even the output is the same. So it's so powerful where now there is a model that can perceive the world in a visual aspect and also from a linguistic aspect. So
that's crazy.
That would be interesting to play out. I think GPT-4 is also multimodal to a certain extent.
In this whole new world of AI, clearly there are winners, right? For example, Microsoft is potentially a massive winner. Adobe is a massive winner because of how they are embedding generative capabilities in Photoshop and stuff. Microsoft, of course, I don't know how did that investment decision make sense at that time before but it was crazy. Who are the other winners?
Primarily NVIDIA.
My God.
They are dominating.
If you had told me 10 years back NVIDIA would be $1 trillion company, I would have never believed.
And it's because of a crazy bet they took around 2007 or 8, right? Yeah. So the story of NVIDIA is pretty interesting. It was started in the early 90s, I think. I think it's Jensen who's the CEO. So they started catering early into the gaming industry when the gaming industry was not even an industry at that point. And they wanted to take a similar bet with AI and be one of the early movers of AI. What they did was, this is in 2000, between 2007 and 2010, they created a framework called CUDA. And what the framework did basically is, it was a layer on top of GPUs, so that developers or machine learning researchers at that point can run neural networks on GPUs, which is massively faster than running neural networks on CPUs.
And this was in like 2007?
Between 2007 to 10, right?
Wow,
Early.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, even the AI field didn't believe in deep learning at that time.
Right.
The theoretical fundamentals were laid out. People like Jeffrey Hinton, Jan LeCun, they laid out the fundamentals. But the problem was, neural networks required massive compute, right? And they were extremely slow. And then GPUs were initially built for the gaming industry to process high quality graphics. And they wrote this framework that enables easy, simpler mathematical operations on top of the GPU, so that developers do not have to write their own framework. What naturally happened is, after 2012, when the deep learning rush came in, when neural networks became mainstream, everybody using neural networks needed GPUs. And which was the easiest GPU to work with neural networks? NVIDIA.
Easy.
It was a massive 10-year bet, and I think it was a really big project. But now that's what made them a $1 trillion company.
I really love these guys who take early bets, because I always wonder what the hell they were thinking. Like, how do you believe in something that has a very narrow chance of winning, but somehow see that through? I think it's amazing. Yeah. Great.
And I mean, connecting back to it, it's similar. You remember, Alagan, probably 3 years back, we had a conversation on how we should be focusing on conversational AI, right?
Wow, yeah.
This is pre-chat GPT era. Very less tools and models. I think we had a conversation on how
Rasa was like the best ease of use you could get.
Rasa's intent entity detection was the best framework to get at that point. And it was so complex to build a chatbot. I mean, ChatGPT level chatbots were a dream back then. Even a chatbot that can handle memory, have its own memory, was good, super quality. And how the bets we took there, and now we have made our own contribution to the largest framework.
I think it was many years back that we did the chatbot for Sparsilon, when they were like stuck with hundreds of messages on a daily basis, and they wanted to automate it. And it was such a difficult problem for us to deal with, because bringing kind of human level intelligence to a chatbot was not easy at that time. And we had to do a lot of layering, different things in between. We were using Rasa. We even ended up contributing to Rasa. And that was cool, because we saw a problem in the world's largest conversational AI framework. We had a massive problem. We fixed it, and we wanted everybody to use it. And then it's an interesting story on how the problem came up. So one day, it started very simple. Right? We were working with Sparsilon, and we had to embed the product knowledge of Sparsilon. So they had more than 1,000 products. The product catalog was more than 2,000. So that had product descriptions, the prices, everything. We wanted to embed that into the model. And at that time, Rasa had a feature called knowledge bases, which was promised to be an easy integration for external knowledge into chatbots. And it was one of the members of the AI team who was doing that integration. And one day we had a call, and they were saying, I think it was Kachitra from the team. She was saying, Thiru, it's not possible because the framework doesn't support it. And we're like, okay, we can look into it. So it's an open source framework. Let's look into it. There was a massive gap in the framework in how they handled the integration of external knowledge into chatbots, right? And when we searched even more, the problem was so big that a lot of people have commented about it in communities, and basically the next best option is just to custom develop knowledge base, right? Yeah, create your own knowledge base. And this amazing feature wasn't being used, and a lot of developers were being affected. And we thought, okay, why not fix the problem? And oh my God, it was
It was, I think it took us more than 8 months. We
Yeah.
rewrote the entire search logic, and we got it approved, I
But
think, 3 weeks back.
it's super cool, right? Because I mean, when I go talk to companies and even governments in Europe that are doing conversational AI, applications, and we go in as like an AI consulting firm, and I go in as like, I'm the CEO of Rootcode AI, blah blah. We can help you, build your conversational AI, and then they will say, okay, so will you be using Rasa because we are using. Now he can go and say, you know what,
You're welcome.
if you are using that, I mean, you're welcome. Yeah, that's a super cool place to be. Yeah. I'm very glad that we did that.
So similarly, it was an early bet.
It was an early bet, yeah. And I think this whole everything that we did in Rootcode and everything we did in Rootcode AI was an early bet.
Yeah.
There was no reason for us to be here. There was no reason for us to believe in the fact that we will get here. Early bets, but relentless work.
Yeah. I mean, think about when we started the AI team.
I know.
It was
how much we invested into building R&D to, it was just, I'm glad. Looking back, I'm super glad that we took some of these bets. And there was a point it was very painful as well, because when you build an organization, just investment, when it keeps going in, it just hurts you at some point. Right?
I remember asking you for compute instances. Alagan, we need GPU powered instances to run LLMs. You're like, okay.
And I think I remember at some point, like early stages when we were not making revenues, and when we were investing heavily on building like intellectual property. I remember we were looking at the numbers and we were joking, we could buy a car every month instead. Why are we doing this? But yeah, I mean, all of them took us here, and I think the credibility that we have in the market as kind of people who know their shit, like in AI, in helping companies build AI, is because of that.
Yeah.
So early bets again.
And I think the benefit of taking early bets is that we can fail fast and learn fast.
I know.
The mistakes, let's say somebody starts an AI startup now at the peak of the AI hype. We made those mistakes a couple of years back or even more. And then we learn from it. So now we are at a point, for example, even when we have clients, when they came to us because they wanted to build a conversational AI layer on top of their existing domain knowledge of the business, we knew what the exact problems that are going to come, the data privacy issues, the hallucination issues.
So, and we knew that we have to, we knew that we have to use GPT here for efficiency. But first thing we knew was, let's get to Microsoft and OpenAI and let's negotiate on the privacy.
Exactly.
To run it on our own Azure instance and make sure that they don't even read the queries, right?
Yeah.
That also comes, I think, because we went through the depth of conversational AI and the pain of building it. So good place to be. Where do you think it's heading?
I think, if we look,
you think AGI is possible?
Definitely, yes. At the pace, I think earlier the estimates were around 20 years, 2 decades. Now it's half a decade. The estimates are around half a decade because of the rapid development of models. And there is still some argument on what is AGI.
Artificial How do you define AGI, right?
So we are the definition of AGI, right?
But it's also so complicated as a machine, right?
So is it the smartest human who is the best AGI?
Yeah.
How do we define smart?
Yeah.
And generally, even we naturally define smartness as a unique specialization in something, like somebody like Magnus Carlsen, extremely smart in chess, not maybe in boxing. I don't know. So
that's a good point. Yeah, I'm good at some things and I suck at many things. So.
All of us are like that.
Yeah. If you're going to measure me in something that I suck at, I'll be like in the weaker spectrum of the bell curve. But that would be interesting. So one of these issues around the space of regulations, copyright is how do we compensate fairly to content creators? One, and number two, the problem is like how do you measure this? Like if I go to a concert and listen, or if I just listen to Justin Bieber, God forbid, if I listen to Justin Bieber and then I copy the music and create something similar that looks something similar, then yes, I mean you can sue me for copyright. What if I listen to like million songs in my lifetime and I'm creating something that feels original in my head and that looks original? Am I unfairly using what I learned? And if I can do that, why can't a model do that?
But I think it's also the disparity between human creativity versus a model learning.
Why
right?
is human creativity special?
Partially because I think as humans, we still try to draw a line between a machine's ability to do things and our own creativity.
We want to feel special, don't we?
One reason, yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to
Yeah.
feel special. But I think there is also some logical idea behind it, saying there are huge corporate entities profiting from it.
Yeah.
And these models are using their data
So
without
why would you pay us?
Exactly. So imagine if this was a framework, right? Let's say we start a company, very crazy idea, but we hire hundreds of, I don't know, kids, young adults. We play okay, so the entire job, 9 to 5, is going to be listening to music, right?
Okay.
Different genres of music. We train them in music, musical notes to complex compositions, from Mozart to,
Okay.
I mean, I'm sorry for the comparison, but Justin Bieber. We give them the taste of
What
everything.
did Justin Bieber do to us? But yeah.
Sorry, Justin.
Sorry, Justin, we love you.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
and now let's say we do it as an organization. We are training these human neural networks. And after 1 year of working, we ask them to, create their own piece of music.
Okay.
Now, is it legally unfair for Justin Bieber?
Not really.
Not really.
Yeah.
But I think it's also people like Justin Bieber, the owners, the data owners, knowing that they can get a fair compensation out of it.
That's what pushes this. When they know that these, like you said, these corporates are profiting out of it, and they also see there's an option, they want to push it and see. It's going to be interesting to see how you define it. Because these models are absolutely capable. If you take 100 humans, they are capable of listening, but a big part of them are not capable of producing music, even if they listen well. Yeah. So machines can be tuned for near perfection in learning and outputting, right? I don't know. It's going to be fun. And I don't think these content creators are going to back away that easily.
Yeah.
They are just not going to back off. They are just going to
There's even a writer's strike in,
yeah.
I think, LA, Hollywood. There was a massive writer's strike.
I'm sure they are going to squeeze as much as they can and then get a piece of these, LLM profits that come out of it. But let's say if everybody agrees to regulate it, right? I know there's some technicality to that. I think somebody in the last community meetup asked the same question as well. There's some possibility in figuring out where the model learned. But for me, it seems extremely complex. How do you figure out, did the model weight change or did the model learn based on these things? So then we should pay this publisher. Does it even make sense?
It's not one publisher, right?
Right.
And again, neural networks are a total black box. There's some research on interpretability, but as the models get bigger and bigger, so we are talking about hundreds of billions of parameters here. And generally most deep learning based interpretability techniques work on to see which parts of the model get activated, right? It's similar to how neuroscientists scan the brain. They know which function correlates with hearing because that part of the brain activates the most when we hear sound. But that same technique can't be applied here because the model is referring to its own memory embedded in a different form, right? It's in weights, it's in numbers.
True.
And I think even if we do build it, per generation, it's, the compensation scheme is going to be very difficult. It's going to be divided among millions of creators. So it's a pretty complex idea if we think about it.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see if this whole claim ever works, and then if it works, how do you police it? How do you measure it? Regulators are also scared to regulate because they don't want to stop innovation from happening, right?
Yeah.
And countries think very territorially as well. What if we regulate and somebody else doesn't regulate?
Right? The free market capitalism kicks in, right? You
I
need
know,
innovation.
Right? Yeah. And but it is powerful, so it's going to be interesting to see how we all deal with it. But it's a great time to be, yeah, for sure.
And interestingly, when talking about this geopolitical concept of AI, I think this was again another interesting question. We got some really interesting questions from our AI community meetup.
Can you believe out of the 120 people joined, at least I counted 30 people asked solid questions.
I had to sit back and process for 4 seconds, 4 to 5 seconds on
such a lovely event. I'm so glad that we organized the community meetup. We should continue to do that very often.
Yes. So this is also, I think, one of the questions when somebody asks, do you think AI, like nukes, nuclear, arsenals and nuclear energy and gold, historically things that were used to show the wealth and power of nations, will it be a power symbol? But if we can dissect this question interestingly, one is AI is not a commodity, right? Gold is just going to sit there. Nukes, it's a way to show what's going to happen to you if you mess with me. But this is like having the most intelligent being making decisions for you in different directions, from defense to strategy to economic policy. So it's interesting to see how it'll tip the scales of power dynamics between countries, because now it's not a commodity. It's additional intelligence.
And it's also what the model is specialized in and how productive it is, right? It's not all AI models are equal in some sense, right? Yeah. So Anthropic is really focused on setting, very good guardrails, right? Do you think that's going to work?
Well, Anthropic uses a different approach.
Yeah.
So they have this set
governance system kind of thing.
Values embedded in the model throughout training. OpenAI uses RLHF, reinforcement learning from human feedback, where humans create, the model is first trained, and a bunch of humans, hundreds of them, grade whether the responses are toxic or not, and the model learns from it to not generate toxic content. But Anthropic is trying to use a different approach where while training, the model learns a set of values, and that it should not be, for example, homophobic or toxic, what is toxicity, and so on. They have an interesting way to do it. So it's, simply put, it's kind of like, instead of waiting until a teenager becomes 18 or a human becomes 18 to tell them what's good and what's bad, it's like how we groom values as the kid grows over time. So, and it's proven to be effective, the approach they're using there.
Great. There was this recent research about how models can possibly, have their own competition and reward inside, right? can models go rogue at some point, or can like a free guy movie scenario happen at any point?
I mean, we can never say that it can never happen, right?
Yeah.
Because when there was this very interesting recent research, and I think it came out after the Free Guy movie release. This
Okay.
was around sometime this year. It was the buzz of the AI community at that time, and so they had these set of agents in an environment with limited resources, and these agents were given the goal of survival, and then there was also a part of the reward function that told that you should be better, or all agents are not made equal. And I'm not sure of the exact logics behind it, but there was a hierarchy. Right. And they just left these agents interact with each other. So there was food, there was, there were very limited resources, and they had some abilities, or they had some options in that environment also. Interestingly, when they let these agents interact with each other over time, they started forming their own groups, their own sort of values and own strategies to get to the top of the hierarchy. So it shows how whenever, if
That
any
sounds like
algorithm
our
is-
life.
Huh?
That sounds like our life.
Exactly, our entire history of evolution, right?
Yeah.
So now let's say one of the agent figures out that it's living in a simulation, then that's where things start to get interesting. Because now these models can understand language, they have their own goals, but they also know they are in an environment which is inside of another environment.
But it's also going to be extremely difficult for the model to realize it's in a simulation. I mean, we are trying so hard to find whether we are in a simulation,
Or not.
there's no clue. I don't think we'll find it that easily. I mean, logic points everywhere to the fact that possibly we are in a simulation, but we will never find it, I guess. That's what I used to think the moment when I realized, okay, it sounds like very much like a simulation. You can look at it in two ways, right? Oh my God, what's the point of everything? Let's just, have a beer and then sleep. On the other side is, it's a simulation. Why don't you try your best and get to the top and do everything that you want and desire?
Interestingly, it's simulation theory that connects well with the free will concept.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, we might be models. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah.
Yes.
We'll never know. Models are not supposed to know they are models. They can talk shit like this, but they would never know for sure.
Imagine the creators of the simulation, if we are in one.
They'll be laughing. Yeah. Because the funny thing is, like, all this development that we had is like, what, 50 years? 100 years of this whole computing / now AI? Like, the universe existed for millions of years. How come it's at least my logical brain struggles to believe that for millions of years we haven't grown in this, but suddenly randomly in the last 100 years we got lucky. Yeah. And this whole concept of ancestral simulation, that also makes sense, right? Can you bend time? Can you go forward and backward? We'll never know. We'll never have answers. Yeah. But AI is closest to the magic that we see in the current universe, that makes our life exciting now. And let's see how it goes.
And over time, I think it'll also tell us more about our own intelligence.
I think so.
Not only from a biological information perspective, but observing these networks may tell us obvious starking differences between how the natural brain works and how neural networks work. But I think they can tell us a lot about how our intelligence functions work, or how our reward functions work. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes ahead.
Lovely, Thiru. Such an amazing discussion. We do this usually after work in my room, sit down and sip a coffee and they talk random stuff. And I'm so glad that we did it in front of the camera, so that, hopefully it was useful. Do give us feedback. This is our first ever podcast session. We are trying to do our best in talking about interesting topics. And we need your feedback, comments, and share, and then tell us what you want us to talk about in the next episode. And then we'll try to bring you more and more new tech, new AI, new everything that's happening in the whole tech world. And we'll see you in another episode of Tech After Work.